This week, as we're getting ready to cover the armor of God, seemed to wrap up our spiritual warfare series on that. And as I was getting into this this passage in Ephesians chapter 6, which is where we'll be for the next several weeks, as I was studying, just some of it was things that just came to me. It seemed to be new from this passage. And God does that. Some of you think, oh, the pastor just gets up there and he gives me the message. But trust me, those who actually prepare and preach, God does the work all week through the pastor. So if you wonder why he's frazzled, it's not just because someone called me because their bursitis was acting up. It's because a lot of times God works in the heart of his messenger before the messenger can give the message. Guys, spiritual warfare is a serious, weighty, heavy subject. And I've told you this from the beginning of it. The problem with spiritual warfare is a lot of us are fighting wrong. And by fighting it wrong, as you'll see today, literally, we are fighting battles that are not ours. And I'm telling you, our lives will be better, our marriages will be better, we'll be better parents, we'll be better kids when we do what Paul says here in Ephesians, and we do the proper thing and let God do what God does. I grew up back in the golden age of NASCAR racing. We had truly great drivers, right? Not drivers that grew up playing video games. We had great drivers. My uncle's favorite driver and one of my favorite drivers was Dale Earnhardt Sr., right? The Intimidator. I mean, the guy literally drove the wheels off of other people's cars so he could win, right? It's not bumping, right? It's not running into, it's not pushing, it's called rubbing, right? And he mastered that slingshot all way before Ricky Bobby. I mean, he was just an old school driver, right? You see a picture of him, never wore the first whole full-faced helmet. I'll bet the only reason he wore those goggles is because his wife made him, because otherwise he'd be in his sunglasses, right? But he has that saying there, the winner ain't the one with the fastest car, it's the one who refuses to lose. Last week we talked about holding on, that God will bring the victory. God will save us if we're faithful. Any of you ever been able to do the NASCAR experience where you get to get in the car and drive around the track? I used to dream of being able to do that, right? Just go as fast as you want and get it set up. Wouldn't it be awesome, in my mind, in a dream, to be able to be in, and I'm not a big Chevy guy, you know that, but to be in Dale Sr.'s Impala, not the Lumina. You guys remember the Luminas? Those were ugly, stinking race cars. I don't even know what they were thinking. But man, that Impala, that made me want to buy a Chevy, right? Just a sleek-looking car. But to be out there on the racetrack, just flying around to victory. In Ephesians chapter 6, we need to remember why Paul wrote to the Ephesians. Paul had been to Ephesus on his second missionary journey. He had established a church there. Priscilla and Aquila had been through there. They had worked in the church. Paul actually pastored that church for some time. He left Timothy to stay there. And the issue that was going on in the church at Ephesus is there were other, they weren't even well-meaning, other people, slicksters, charlatans, businessmen, other people in the assembly would automatically look up to. They had started sharing false doctrine. And that false doctrine had started taking hold in the church. So Paul writes to the Ephesians, and he wants to clear things up. The first 3 chapters in the book of Ephesus are all about doctrine. This time period, this book of Ephesus, also kind of coincides with 1 Timothy, if you want to kind of put them together. Paul writes Timothy, he's at the church of Ephesus, and he's encouraging that young pastor how to deal with things. There were a lot of myths and a lot of sayings going around. These false teachers were saying, hey, you don't need to get married, right? Paul even writes, I wish you all were like me, unrestricted by marriage, and that way you're able to serve the Lord. But that's not doctrine. That is a myth. That is something someone tried to bring up. Talk about genealogies, ancestors, abstain from certain foods, right? All of these things were going on in this church, and Paul wanted to set it straight, so he wrote them a letter. And in that letter, first 3 chapters, he tells them doctrine. The last 3 chapters, now that you know what Jesus said, what God said, this is how it's supposed to be lived out. In our family, in our work environment, in the church, in our relationships with each other, all of that is practical understanding. And then he gets to chapter 6 and verse 10. Now, if you were here for Sunday school, we were talking about Bible study, and I told you the importance of connecting words. We talked about that. The first word here is finally. When you hear the word finally, what do you think of? I know you're sitting in church, you're going, when the pastor says finally, whew, I can close my Bible, put my notes away, it's about time to go eat, right? But usually when you hear the word finally, it's the summation of everything that's gone before, right? I've given you all of this information to get to here. So understand that. The things that Paul is about to give are the important things that he laid all this groundwork to. So he says, finally, I want you to hold on to this. Finally, be strong in the Lord in the strength of his might. Whose might are we to be strong in? His. Notice that, circle it, underline it, because how many times do we take a phrase that is not in the Bible, by the way? Well, the good Lord helps those that help themselves. Sounds good, doesn't it? But it's not there. We are to be strong in his might. Put on, verse 11, the whole armor of God, that you may be able to stand. There's an important word. We are to stand against the schemes of the devil. That devil is a wily one, right? A lot of us, we can see the full front-on attacks. We can repel those. We understand those. But when there's schemes, Satan did not come to Eve in the form of a brilliant angel and tell her, hey, eat of this fruit, because if you do, you will be like God. But oh, by the way, you're going to die. That's not what he did. He took on the form of a serpent. For whatever reason, Eve talked to a serpent apparently quite a bit because she wasn't shocked. Hey, Adam, the serpent's talking to me again. None of that happened in the Bible, right? And he starts talking with her, and he slowly works this in. Did God really say? Oh, look at it. It looks good. God wouldn't want you to stay away from anything that's good. There's this reasoning that goes on. The devil likes to use schemes. Verse 12, for we do not wrestle against flesh and blood. Guys, our battle is not in the physical realm. However, the overflow of what happens in the spiritual realm affects us in the physical. If your spouse decides that they want to go step out on you, that they want to leave you, that there's a better person for them, and they've just outgrown you, right? That spiritual warfare definitely made its way to the physical realm, did it not? Those vows that you took, the promise that God said that your spouse is to be the one that fulfills all of that physical intimacy, all of that sexual desire is supposed to stay inside of the marriage vow. Oh boy, that desire shows up outside. But that is a physical battle, is it not? That friend sends you those pictures or sends you that stuff that you shouldn't see, and you see it and you're like, I don't want to see it, but then you kind of keep one eye open and look at it. What happens in the spiritual realm, we do fight here in the physical realm, but we need to realize it originates there. We don't wrestle against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the cosmic powers. I like the way the ESV puts it, cosmic powers. I feel like I'm in Star Wars or Star Trek, right? I'm fighting cosmic power. Let me get out my lightsaber. All right? Against spiritual forces of evil in heavenly places. None of this battle is taking place here on the earth. This battle is fought in a whole nother realm. Therefore, verse 13, take up the whole armor of God that you may be able to withstand in the evil day, and having done all, stand firm. He mentioned stand more than one time, did he not, in this section? So, when it's mentioned quite a few times, it probably is a point of emphasis. I think Paul is wanting the Ephesians to understand how important it is for us to hold firm in our faith. Those false prophets were doing everything they could to muddy up the gospel, to muddy up Paul's preaching, to muddy up all of that time that he had invested. They were coming against Timothy, so much so that he has to write a letter to encourage Timothy to hold your ground, to stand up, to rebuke them as you would a father or as a brother, but you need to hold your ground and hold on to that gospel message. So what all is involved in the armor of God? Well, I pulled it down from the internet and a nice little picture here for you. But if you've been in church, you know it, right? The helmet of salvation, the breastplate of righteousness, the belt of truth, the shield of faith, and in our feet shod with the gospel of peace. That is the armor that God wants us to put on. As I was studying this week, and you guys know I've mentioned before, Deverett and I get together and he makes sure that I'm not preaching any heresy or outright apostasy as much as he knows, because he's not the one giving the message. We sat in my office this week, and next thing you know, I looked at him, I said, do you know it's 10:45 already? This passage is so rich. I want you to look at this armor for a minute. And I want you, before you blurt out the answer or before you say something, I want you to look at that armor. I want you to show me or tell me where the offensive weapon is. Here's the main point of this message I want you to hold on to. We are not told, we are not called to go and make war. Understand that. We are not supposed to make war. How many Christians, though, or how many pastors do we find or have we heard, even in my own life growing up in that independent, fundamental, born-again, Bible-believing, King James only, devil-stomping Baptist church, right? We may not be right, but we know where we stand, right? How many times have we been told we need to go take that ground? I'm a soldier in the Lord's army. We're march on, Christian soldier, right? As to war. The passage we get those songs from right here has nothing to do with us marching to war. Has nothing to do with, I want you to take on the armor of God and I want you to go take back the gates of hell. Now, as a red-blooded, gun-toting United States American male, it appeals to me to want to go take that ground, though, doesn't it? Because I'm a man. I want to go conquer that. I want to slay the dragon, save the princess. That's the way God made me. Guys, when it comes to spiritual things, there's a different approach. See, Jesus fought and won the war on the cross. The battle, the war has been won. Woo! We are victorious. But Pastor, I don't feel victorious. Yeah, we've won the war, but there's still little skirmishes go on and we still need to make it through. But the fact is, it is won. All we have to do is stand in that victory. No offensive weapons. Well, what about the sword, Pastor? What do you do with the sword? Do you take that sword and throw it at someone? Think you're Braveheart? About the only movie I've seen, someone try and throw a broadsword, right? Sword you don't throw at someone. It's for close contact fighting, isn't it? Offensive weapon back then would have been catapults, slingshots, right? It doesn't say take up your slingshots that you may sling and hurl insults to Satan from a great distance, right? It doesn't say grab up your bow, grab up your arrows, and launch arrows over the walls, over the gates of hell, does it? In fact, we're told to take up the shield of faith so that we can stop Satan's long-range attacks, are we not? The fiery darts. Paul is encouraging the church at Ephesus to stand firm. Let's go back to my dream for a minute of driving in NASCAR. Let's say I'm right. Dale Earnhardt Sr., I know he's dead, so that you know it's definitely a dream, right? He calls me up. He says, Scott, I've heard that you can really drive that old 2008 Ford Mustang you had. I want you to come drive my car for me. It's the last race of the year. I broke my foot. I can't drive. I need you to drive the car in the last race so that I can win the points title. All you've got to do to win and do me proud is all you've got to do is finish the race. All you got to do is finish the race. Now, what man, red-blooded American man, wouldn't do that for Dale Earnhardt Sr.? Right? Yeah. Even if you don't like Dale Earnhardt Sr., I get to drive a NASCAR. I get to go fast. Right? Turn left. I don't have to ask for directions. I just keep turning left. And all that power, right? So I get suited up. Get my little race car suit, my little race car shoesies, right? I look awesome. Some of you think I can picture it, Pastor. You look like the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. Maybe so, but he's awesome. All right? I get my helmet. I climb into that car, flip the switches. I start that thing. I pull off into the track. I've never driven a race car. That sucker's loud. It's hot. I don't know if you guys know this. They have air conditions in the suits now, but back when Dale Earnhardt, they didn't have air conditioning. Those cars are hot. My nephew raced sprint cars for a while, and I'd go out and help. And my first church, there were guys that ran modifieds. Man, those things are hot. There's no padding in those seats. But I'm in there because I'm racing NASCAR, right? We're going around the track. I'm doing exactly what he told me. Pace car heads off. Everyone speeds up. I speed up. I'm staying in the back. I don't want to get in the traffic. I don't want to get rubbed. This is Dale Earnhardt Sr.'s job. I know he wrecks it, but I'm not going to wreck it, right? So I stay in the back. And I'm keeping up. Next thing you know, there's a few cars that are behind me because they've had engine problems, but they're not going to quit. I'm moving up. I can see the scoreboard as I go by just a little bit, and it shows, the number 3 car moving up there. Whoa, I'm doing all right. Haven't blown anything. I change a gear, put my foot down to the pedal a little bit more, and I get up there onto someone's tail and just draft for a while. Nothing's happened yet, right? I'm going good. Maybe I can pass this guy. Dale Sr. can do it. I can do it. This is his car. I slap down that thing in gear, go around this guy, and sure enough, now I'm in traffic, but I'm doing it, right? Can you almost hear Dale Sr. at home yelling at the TV, Scott, you idiot, I told you, just finish the race. Don't wreck my car. Because what happens if I don't finish? There goes his point title. There goes his bonus. There goes his trophy. That's why it's a dream, because no one would ever give me that much authority. I've got all of this power at my disposal. Pride starts creeping in, right? I can win this. I can win this. So, of course, I pray to God first, but then I say a little prayer to the racing gods, Dale Earnhardt Sr., be with me. And I just floor that sucker and try and pass everyone, right? Just because we have all the power and we have all the authority from Jesus Christ given to us doesn't mean that he's given us the authority to exercise it at every turn. Do you understand what I'm saying? sometimes, and as Paul is telling the church here, don't wreck things. Keep it simple, stupid. And I need you to finish the race. Paul tells us to put on all of this armor. We are truly in the Lord's army. But what you need to understand about the Lord's army is the Lord is in front of us and He's already winning the battles. All we're doing is following Him. Do you catch me? All I'm doing is following Him. That's why I need the shield of faith. The devil can't come in here and fight me close quarters. He's sending those arrows over top trying to get them to me from Jesus, and I'm putting them out. When he does get close enough, I have the sword to keep him at bay, but I know that I am just walking in the victory that Jesus has already won. Shouldn't that make the Christian life so much easier? There's not striving, guys. All I have to do is rest in Him, hold to what He's given me to do, and let Him keep winning the battles. John 16, verse 33. I have said these things to you that in me you may have peace. Our world tells us you're not good enough, you're not strong enough, you need to keep striving, you need to lose weight, you need to gain hair, whatever it may be. Jesus says, He's telling His disciples, just before He goes to the cross, He's told them everything that is going to happen. And He says, I'm telling you, I'm going to die because I want you to be at peace. Because in the world, you will have tribulation. The reason the Ephesians have to put on the armor of God is because they are still in the skirmish. Even though Jesus is going in front of us, even though the victory is sure, there's still a skirmish is going on. We need to have our armor. We need to be prepared. But you will have tribulation, but take heart, I have overcome the world. There is no problem, there is no circumstances that is in your life that Jesus has not provided and given the victory over. None. But you don't understand. They're still around me. Absolutely they are. You need to buckle up the armor of God. You don't need me to preach up the sermon on it. You can read it right there in the rest of Ephesians 6 for yourself, and you can apply it. Satan's trying to get at my heart. Hey, the breastplate of righteousness. I know I'm an undeserving sinner. I know that I have issues, but God said that He has put on me Jesus' righteousness. Hey, I'm having these bad thoughts. You need to take on the helmet of salvation and protect your head and protect your mind. I have been given a new life, a new heart, and God is trying to renew me. I need to focus on things above, not on things below, and I will renew my mind. I'm losing ground. We need to remember that because of the cross of Jesus Christ, my hope and my future is secure. I am firm in Him because of what He's done on the cross. I don't know which way to go. I don't know who's telling the truth. Thy word is truth. Take up that belt of truth. Well, we'll talk about this next week, but the belt connects everything together. It takes their robe, it cinches it down, it holds on to the sword. The breastplate even kind of lynches on it in some places. Man, that truth is key for everything. It just seems everyone's throwing stuff at you. Grab your faith. That walk, that experience you have with Jesus, the confidence we have that every promise God has given, it's always come true. Stand firm. Church, let's stop looking for fights. Let's stop creating battles. What if we stand firm in what Jesus has already done? What if we let Him fight the battles? What if we truly give it to Him like the last part of Ephesians 6 in this section talks about? Pray, pray, pray. That's where the battle's fought. That's where the battle's won. Father, I want to thank You for the time You've given us this morning in Your Word. I want to thank You for the gift of the cross, for the victory that came through what Jesus did on the cross. That I know my sins are forgiven, that heaven is my home that can't be taken away. but we don't live in heaven yet. Here in the physical realm, we are distracted by what truly is our life, what we smell, what we touch, what we feel, what we hear. Forgive us when we take over the battle instead of trusting that you have it. You've told us, I've read the verse, we will have tribulation. But you've won. My prayer is for the Christian that's struggling, thinking they're not enough, that they have to make something of themselves, that they grab hold of the promises that we've discussed today. Maybe for the Christian that is overreaching and trying too much, thinking they have to save the world or have to fix everything. That they realize what Paul is encouraging the Ephesians to do is to know your word, to root themselves in the gospel, and to stand. Allow you to fight. Allow you to bring the victory.